Hello and welcome to the I Hit Drums podcast with me, Mark, your teacher for this series. We've almost reached the end of the book and we're looking at the final lesson chapter, Doubles Continue. Within my first book, A Beginner's Guide, we did look at some doubles exercises, and we also looked at singles and paradiddles as well, and then eventually combined all these. Now, if you haven't worked through the exercise yet, you can find it in the book A Beginner's Guide, available on my website, www.ihitdrums.co.uk. But if you've gotten this far in the second series, then maybe you've already worked through doubles and you're in the right place. You can also go back to those previous episodes that do detail some of those exercises within the first book. But what do I mean by doubles continued? Now, you should know by now that doubles just means right, right, left, left, but there's a lot you can do with that. And when we first looked at doubles, it really was just right, right, left, left, and just getting comfortable with that pattern. In this lesson chapter, we're going to try and work on the mechanics of doubles in a little bit more detail. And on page 97 of Intermediate 1, we've got exercise 10.1. Now visually, this is quite a simple looking exercise, but we're going to try and refine the movement of this, and that's the real purpose. The first bar, we just have right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left as eighth notes. So singles, single sticking. I want you to play this bar hinging from the elbows, so all the energy, all the movement is coming from the elbow. You're going to move the entire forearm for the right strike, the entire forearm for the left strike, and so on. Once you transition into that second bar, we now have 16th notes played as doubles. So 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, played as right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. And what I'd like you to try and do with this is maintain the same movement of the forearms you had in the first bar, playing 1 and 2 and. But when you strike the drum, create a double hit from the wrist. And by doing this, you're maintaining the same forearm movement through the entire exercise, but you're using your wrist to change from a single sticking in the first bar to a double sticking in the second bar. Now, if perhaps you've done a bit more research into doubles, you might also be familiar with the open-close technique, or the push-pull technique sometimes it's called, where you actually open the fingers, except for the one holding the stick, on the first stroke, and then you pull the fingers back and snap that stick for the second stroke. This can be another way of producing doubles instead of using the wrist. But when you're working at the slower speeds, working from the wrist should be fine. If you are interested in working on those open-close push-pull techniques, I would strongly recommend Jojo Mayer's DVD on hand technique. You're not going to find better than that, and I'm not going to waste your time trying to do better than that. So let's give this exercise a try. So the first bar, you're moving from the elbow, the forearm moves for all of those strikes, and then as you move into the second bar, that strike becomes a double hit, but the forearm movement remains the same. Let's give it a try. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
In the next exercise, exercise 10.2, we've got exactly the same thing for the hands, but we're introducing a bass drum on the quarter note. And this is just going to help you strengthen some of your independence between the limbs. You could also try alternate feet, bass drum, hi-hat, or even just the hi-hat foot on the quarter note. All of these variations are going to strengthen your independence on the kit. But let's move on to exercise 10.3. This one's a little bit more interesting. We're going to take exactly the same sticking pattern we just played in 10.1, but this time we're going to start putting it around the kit. So in the first bar, we've got that single sticking as eighth notes, moving the entire forearm for each hit, and we're going snare, snare, high, high, mid, mid, floor, floor. Then as we move into that second bar, we're keeping that same movement of the forearm, but we're doubling the strikes as we go around the kit. And just a reminder, I don't have a mid-tom on my kit, so I'll be going back to the snare drum, and you can do that as well instead of the mid-tom. Let's give it a try. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, it's important that you don't always prioritize doubles or any kind of sticking pattern with the right hand leading all the time. We want to make sure the left hand gets an equal workout. So in exercise 10.4, we've got a very similar exercise, but we're leading with the left hand. Now, because we're going to be going left, right, instead of right, left, we're going to be moving anti-clockwise around the kit. So we're going to start on the floor tom, move to the mid tom, then the high tom, then the snare drum. And again, if you don't have a mid tom, you can move from the floor tom to the snare drum, then to the high tom, back to the snare drum. Let's give it a try. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Those last two exercises are really setting you up for exercise 10.5, where we've got lots of different variations between singles and doubles moving around the kit. And these are really going to help you get comfortable switching between not only single and double sticking, but actually doing that around the kit whilst keeping a flow going with the movement of the forearm. And this will really help you when you start creating your own fills, because being able to take a simple eighth note idea and then at a moment's notice change that idea to double sticking is essentially going to take one fill, and you're going to have multiple options that you can go to from that initial starting point. So something like 1 and 2, 3 and 4 can immediately become 1E and a 2, 3 and a 4. And you can get all these different variations that are pretty much endless once you start combining different rhythm with different drums. And those are on page 99 of the book Intermediate 1, which you can find on my website, www.ihitdrums.co.uk. The next and final thing we're going to be looking at today is doubles within triplets. Now, we've just come from working on triplets for quite a long time, but never really dealt with double sticking within that. And this is a little bit tricky, because keep in mind that triplets are a group of 3 and doubles are a group of 2. So you're going to have groups of 2 within the groups of 3. So your starting point for this is going to be exercise 10.6 on page 100. We've got 2 bars that are exactly the same. We've got eighth note triplets the entire time. So for this exercise, we're not going to be doubling the speed when we switch to those doubles. Both bars should sound exactly the same. But in the first bar, we have single stickings, which you're familiar with. 1 and a, 2 and a, played as right, left, right, left, right, left. And then as we move into the second bar, we're still keeping that rhythm, 1 and a, 2 and a, but now we're playing it right, right, left, left, right, right. And then halfway through the bar, that switches around to left, left, right, right, left, left. So getting used to playing triplets as doubles is a little bit tricky at first, and you might find that you either play the bar too short or too long. So doing this exercise with the metronome can be really helpful, because it's going to strengthen your sense of where that quarter note is actually falling as you do those doubles. And the trickiest bit is going to be when you go from the at of 1 into beat 2. Because although you're going from one triplet to the next, there's actually going to be a double strike across that point. And then when you're going from the at of 3 into beat 4, you're going to have another double for that point. So you're actually going from one triplet to the next with the same double stroke. Let's give that a try. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Similar to the last exercises we did just with doubles around the kit, we're now going to be doing doubles within triplets, also around the kit. So the first bar in these exercises will be single sticking, and the second bar will be doubles, but again, each bar should sound the same. Let's try that first example. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Something I hope comes across from the exercises in this book is that you can start with a very simple idea and then build upon it gradually using things like doubles, flams, accents, and anything else you're able to use. until you've grown the idea into something quite unique and original to you. Don't stop experimenting with this. You're only going to be limited by how far you're willing to take an idea. So even when you think something's coming together really well, see if you can push it even further. But also, don't feel like you have to include all these new things that you've learned, and you have to include all the entire kit. Simple ideas can sometimes be some of the best ideas. And just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. Sometimes limiting the drums and cymbals that you use and the techniques that you use can actually help you be more creative. But that's it for this book. You've worked through all the exercises, you've done all the songs, you've learnt a bunch of new stuff at a grade 3 level. This isn't the last episode, however. I will be doing another follow-up episode next time. But until then, enjoy.